Next, our feature presentation is by a member of our community that many of you know. Aaron has a unique ability to make us laugh. He has the unique ability to make us cry. You've seen him give presentations about poetry, and so today we've got him again, and he's giving a presentation on Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Everyone, let's welcome back to the stage again, Aaron Prazan.
Good morning, everybody. Ladies, gentlemen, Eric. So I want to start. Might have to shorten some of the things I'm going to talk about today. So I want to start with a short poem, right? Is the focus. Well, I may not start with that one because I have the wrong page. But I'm going to talk today about Leaves of Grass. Leaves of Grass is a book of poetry by Walt Whitman, published in 1855. And there's a number of reasons why it should be important to humanists and why you should pick it up. One reason, this here is the deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. And this here is the first edition of Leaves of Grass. So pick up the first edition to start. You'll be okay. Whitman is a figure from the 19th century, and so you're like, it's old and it's not very modern, but he is eminently modern. He had very little formal schooling and really taught himself by reading, by going to lectures. I talked to you guys earlier about the classics, and Whitman read the classics, and that's how he became as erudite and as learned and as worldly as he is, even though he didn't really go to school for anything. And one thing I also didn't know, until I really started reading Walt Whitman. When I think of Walt Whitman and Leaves of Grass, I think of the countryside. Thinking Vermont, northern Vermont, maybe Ohio, right? But he's from Brooklyn. Go Nets. So that also is something that I kind of hold dear to my heart about him. So this book, I'm not going to talk too much about the biography. You guys can go to Wikipedia and learn all about him. Although I will tell you, I heard yesterday on This American Life a great story about the Marquis Lafayette, who helped us in the Revolutionary War and came back and did a talk in Brooklyn and kissed a member of the crowd, the assembled masses of people, and that person was Walt Whitman when he was 5. So it's pretty cool. We already talked about the editions. The weird thing about this book, like I said, it's first edition. The editions were 9 times, but it wasn't like reprintings. It was the same book, but he just added stuff. So the first edition had 12 poems, and the deathbed edition is 393. Which nobody does that, right? You think of, I like his early stuff, right? It's all the same, right? He kept reissuing the same thing over and over again. And the thing about this book is it's a radically individual project. And the reason for that is because of its basis in something called transcendentalism. So why is it an individual project? Obviously, he wrote the thing himself. He typeset it himself. He paid for the first edition. He designed the cover. He wrote pseudonymously most of the reviews about the book in various New York newspapers. And that's not something, well, maybe it is something that most people do nowadays, but we have Amazon reviews and whatnot. But he got lucky because Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote his own non-pseudonymous review and published it in the New York Tribune, because originally the book did not sell and was not thought of as very good until Emerson poked his head up and said, you guys should take a look, and it was sort of looked at more closely by New York society, because it was issued with no attribution. This is Leaves of Grass. No by Walt Whitman. It was just published, Leaves of Grass. And the only clue to its author was in a poem, which could have been made up, right? So it kind of was, and we'll talk about that. So it's a weird book because it's so individual. The other thing that's individual about it is it's an entirely new style. He made up free verse. The first guy to really do free verse. Free verse is poetry that doesn't have a regular rhyme and meter, like an iambic pentameter or something like that, where it's like 7-10 beats per line and every third line rhymes or whatever. No, he just kind of conversationally just flow, and he was criticized for, this is, you just spewing your guts and it doesn't have any form or function and we shouldn't pay attention. But now, of course, this entirely new style is really the main style that poets work in, right? T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, William Carlos Williams, who you should check out, Allen Ginsberg, and of course my favorite, Carl Sandburg. Free verse, right? So he invented this thing. That's individuality. And the reason that it's so radically individual is because of his foundation in transcendentalism. Transcendentalism was this philosophical religious movement, in the early part of his life that really said that the moral essence of humanity transcends religion and politics and societal organizations in general. That humanity is an inherent good. That humanity and nature are inherently good and connected. And you hear people talk about, we are all energy and connected in one. That's transcendentalism. And that philosophy, he's sort of steeped in that. And Ralph Waldo Emerson and David Thoreau and other folks around that time were sort of trying to make that a reality. And they really saw the United States as a radical experiment in that, right? But the corrupting influence of politics and organized religion was, the sort of enemy of transcendentalists, and the antidote to those things, to those corrupting influences, was a radical self-reliance. A radical self-reliance on, that glorifies, tradesmen, right? Not the aristocracy, right? Not the institutions, not intellectualism, not the powerful government people, right? It's radical self-reliance on individual humans. And that's the countering force to these corrupting influences, and is the basis for the American, mythology, right? Whitman is part of the reason that that's the basis for the American mythology. So a lot of people read his stuff and said, "This is personal, right?" He's the antecedent to the arts and crafts movement, to regionalist art, from Edward Hopper, respect for folk art as a legitimate form of expression. Even today's DIY or maker movement, right, owes something to Walt Whitman. Environmentalism, obviously, because of the connectedness of humanity and the importance of that dignity, right, of the individual human, no matter their station, no matter their financial value. It's this embrace of Unitarianism. Also, jazz has something to owe something to Walt Whitman. Even homebrewing owes something to Walt Whitman. I would argue, if I had a brew in my hand, if I did, I'd do it. So, Leaves of Grass. What's the grass, right? Well, first of all, the title is a pun. The title is kind of a joke. Leaves are leaves. And grass was a word to describe sort of disposable copy, like what we would call pulp writing, like pulp fiction. Leaves of grass was like pages of trash, right? But but he was obviously kind of satirizing himself. So he says, a child said, "What is the grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, out of hopeful green stuff woven. It's hope, right? Or I guess it's the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer, designedly dropped and bearing the owner's name some way in the corners, that we may see and remark and say, whose? He wasn't a Christian, but it could be a leftover of the deity. Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation, its growth, its procreation. Or I guess it's a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white, Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman, Cuff. I give them the same, I receive them the same. It's a symbol of many, it's a symbol of equality. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves, which is an amazing phrase. And it's history. It's new growth growing out of history. The beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly I will use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be, if I had known them, or I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people or from offspring taken soon out of their mother's laps. And here you are the mother's laps. So this grass is everyone. And it's broader than that. It's humanity, it's the connection with nature, it's the cosmos itself. It's, he's using this metaphor to encompass everything. And every single poem sort of refers back to this grass concept, and it unifies it all. And that is what makes it an amazing work and not just a collection of short poems. This metaphor continues. He says, this is the life. Here is what has come to the surface after so many throes and convulsions. He's saying this grass is the result of history, is the result of thoughts and activities and feelings that are thousands, millions of years old. He says, urge and urge and urge, always the procreant urge of the world, out of the dimness, opposite equals, embrace, always substance and increase. So this grass can mean like a lot of stuff. It can mean love and connection, procreation, but also progress, right? And we can go on. He uses this grass a lot. The other thing that is important here is that the grass is like a divine voice. It is a divinity. So he says, I too, following many and followed by many, inaugurate a religion. I descend into that arena. It may be I'm destined to utter the loudest cries there, the winners' pealing shouts. Who knows, they may rise from me yet and soar above everything. He is planting a flag as of a new religion, but it's not the religion you expect. Each is not for its own sake. I say the whole earth and all the stars in the sky are for religion's sake. This is a big religion, right? I say no man has ever yet been half devout enough. None has ever yet adored or worshipped half enough. None has begun to think how divine he himself is and how certain the future is. So his religion is the religion of yourself over institutions, over preachers, over anything else. I say the real and permanent grandeur of these states must be their religion. He's talking to the United States people in general. Otherwise there is no real and permanent grandeur, nor character, nor life worthy the name without religion, nor land, nor man, nor woman without religion. But it's his religion of radical self-reliance and radical self-love that is the focus, right? I don't know. Now today, that's not going to be heard very well. 1855 is a different country. We didn't have In God We Trust on our coins in 1855. It was a different country, but it was still not nearly as radically humanistic as Walt Whitman was. But he had a lot to say to America. The other grass metaphor that growing out of history is America asserting its power and growing both, politically and economically. He didn't really talk about that too much, but culturally, out of the dead culture of Europe, to say, we are based on this course, and we are the new growth. And the mission was to define a poetry, a literature that was American and was the source of new vitality and creativity in that time. Which is, ambitious, right? To say, hey, we need to make our mark. I'm the guy, okay? I'm the guy, right? Take my leaves, America, take them south and take them north. Make welcome for them everywhere, for they are your own offspring. Surround them east and west, for they would surround you. And you precedents, connect lovingly with them, for they connect lovingly with you. I conned old times, I sat studying at the feet of the great masters. Now, if eligible, oh, that the great masters might return and study me. In the name of these states shall I scorn the antique? Why, these are the children of the antique, to justify it. He's got balls, right? So we are coming out, right? But he cautioned America to be careful. Where's this piece? 19. He says, to the states, or any one of them, or any city of the states, resist much, obey little. Once unquestioning obedience, once fully enslaved, no nation, city, state of this earth, or ever afterwards resumes its liberty. You will hear a lot of people say that and quote him in talk about ideologies that are totally counter to him. But, he's saying, America, you got a great thing going here, but it's fragile. And when Lafayette came back to America and kissed him, right, as a child, he was living proof of that. They had egalite, fraternité, equalité. What's the French triad of liberté? You guys know, but they lost it, right? They had it. They followed us. They said, we're going to have this new experiment focused on humanistic ideals, and the reign of terror, and Napoleon, and the reinstitution of the monarch, and right. So we were it, right? We were it, and he wants to write as an American voice to say, powerful and embrace it. Right? He was. The other thing is, in his time, right, 1855 is slavery time, right? There's slaves around him, right? But he didn't really buy that either. This meal is the meal equally set. This is the meat for natural hunger. It is for the wicked, just the same as the righteous. I make appointments with all. I will not have a single person slighted or left away. The kept woman, sponger, thief are hereby invited. The heavy-lipped slave is invited. The venereally is invited. I don't even know what a venereally is. It's not like venereal nouns. Inside joke. There will be no difference between them and the rest. He's interested in equality and that radical self-love. Having pried through the strata, analyzed to a hair, counseled with doctors, and calculated close, I find no sweeter fat than sticks to my own bones. You know, he wants to include everyone, and he's the leader. But there's a lot of like stuff that could be looked at as a little arrogant in Whitman's writing. But the thing is, his voice is not the voice of him. When he says I, he kind of wants I to be you. And there's a number of passages, I don't want to go deep analysis, but that his point of view shifts constantly. Sometimes I is a woman, sometimes I is, you know, somebody else. The I is not necessarily Walt Whitman. So that's his message to America, right? I love that piece about you're not half devout enough, America, right? That's amazing. Oh, I just have a note here. Anybody seen Dead Poet Society?
Yeah.
Oh, Captain, My Captain is Walt Whitman. Maybe if we had time, maybe we'd read that at the end. Otherwise, you can look it up. But if you didn't know where it was, it's in here. So the other theme, I'm going to cut out one of my middle themes here, but the other theme that Whitman writes a lot about is love. And actually, that's the reason that I started reading Walt Whitman, because for a number of decades, I've been sort of on and off thinking about this question of what is love and is there such a thing? You know, coming out of a pretty deep and rigorous religious training, you know, I'm very familiar with the agape love and you know, the different levels of love that the Greeks talked about, and you know, I'm very familiar with those concepts: the friendly love, the love for a thing, and the love for a lover. I'm very familiar with those concepts, but sort of like what Tim said, you only discover something when you only believe something when you discover it for yourself. Right? So you can read about it all you want. And reading about Whitman was, you know, very revealing about these concepts. He illuminates things in a way that you know, translations of Greek words didn't really do for me. So the first you guys. Which is the first one? This moment? Yeah. So the first, he talks about the connectedness of humanity, right? This moment, yearning and thoughtful, sitting alone, it seems to me there are other men in other lands yearning and thoughtful. It seems to me I can look over and behold them in Germany, Italy, France, Spain, or far, far away in China or Russia or Japan, talking other dialects. And it seems to me, if I could know those men, I should become attached to them as I do to men in my own lands. I know we should be brethren and lovers. I know I should be happy with them. And, you know, like he's got this idea of connectedness with people that he can barely even imagine. I mean, that wasn't a time when you can hop on a plane and go to Japan. I mean, it's like, you might not even believe there is a Japan. You know that if you want to go to Japan, you're going to be on a boat for 6 months and you might die before you get there, and not just because it takes a long time, right? He's got this connectedness with humanity anyway. And it's not just all humanity. I saw in Louisiana a live oak growing. All alone it stood, and the moss hung down from the branches. Without any companion, it grew there, uttering joyous leaves of dark green. He's kind of thinking the tree's a poet, but maybe not, because of the leaves. And its look, rude, unbending, lusty, made me think of myself. But I wondered how it could utter such joyous leaves, standing alone there without its friend near, for I knew I could not. And I broke off a twig with a certain number of leaves upon it, twined around it a little moss, and brought it away, and I placed it in sight in my room. For it is not needed to remind me, as of my own dear friends, for I believe lately I think of little else than them. Yet it remains to me a curious token. It makes me think of manly love for all that, and though the live oak glistens there in Louisiana, solitary in a wide flat space, uttering joyous leaves all its life without a friend or lover near, I know very well I could not. He's interested in human connection also, and friendship. This one, 103. Oh, that one I'm saving for the end. This book was banned when it came out. You know, why is all this patriotic fervor and humanistic connection banned? It's banned because of two reasons. One, he talks pretty explicitly about sex. Two, he talks about homosexual love, which is not 1855, right? No will and grace. But he kind of, when he first started, I shouldn't say when he first started, because when he published this book, he was 37 years old, which is saying something anyway, right? Usually creatives, right, you know, like sort of peak at 28 years old, and then they kind of ride the rest of their lives, right? It's 37 and just getting started, right? But when he started, and I definitely don't think it's because he's afraid, because he was not afraid of anything. But he was kind of wanted to, maybe he was still thinking things out for himself, but he would sort of disguise things. 28 young men bathed by the shore, 28 young men and all so friendly. 28 years of womanly life and all so lonesome. She owns the fine house by the rise of the bank. She hides handsome and richly dressed at the blinds of the window. Which of the young men does she like the best? Ah, the homeliest of them is beautiful to her. Where are you off to, lady? For I see you. You splash in the water there, yet stay stock still in your room. So she's daydreaming here. She's not actually going there. The dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather. The rest could not see her, but she saw them and loved them. The beards of the young men glistened with wet. It ran from their long hair. Little streams passed all over their bodies. This is a perfume commercial. An unseen hand also passed over their bodies. It descended tremblingly from their temples and ribs. The young men float on their backs. Their white bellies bulge to the sun, and they don't ask who seizes fast to them. They don't know who puffs and declines with pendant and bending arch. They do not think whom they souse with spray. This sort of daydream of this woman, right, was really on the line, right, for that time. There's another passage about a marriage of an American man and a Native American woman. I saw the marriage of the trapper in the open air in the far west. The bride was a red girl. Her father and his friends sat near, cross-legged and dumbly smoking. They had moccasins to their feet and large, thick blankets hanging from their shoulders. On a bank lounged the trapper. He was dressed mostly in skins. His luxuriant beard and curls protected his neck, and he held his bride by the hand. She had long eyelashes. Her head was bare. Her coarse, straight locks descended upon her voluptuous limbs and reached to her feet. So he's like sexualizing both the man and the woman here. We can all imagine this like buff guy dressed in animal skins, you know, and this curvaceous woman with hair down to her feet. I mean, he's got it out for everyone. But as he got older, he sort of matured. I won't say matured, but he became a little more focused. And we gotta go. All right, last one. All right, I'm not going to read the one about masturbation. It's really good, though. It's really good. Yeah, that'll be for the extra in the podcast. When I heard at the close of the day how my name had been received with plaudits in the Capitol, still it was not a happy night for me that followed. And else, when I caroused, or when my plans were accomplished, still I was not happy. But the day when I rose at dawn from the bed of perfect health, refreshed, singing, inhaling the ripe breath of autumn, when I saw the full moon in the west grow pale and disappear in the morning light, when I wandered alone over the beach and undressing, bathed, laughing with the cool waters and saw the sun rise, when I thought how my dear friend, my lover, was on his way coming, oh, then I was happy. Then each breath tasted sweeter, and all that day my food nourished me more, and the beautiful day passed well. And the next day came with equal joy, and the next at evening came my friend. And that night, while all was still, I heard the waters roll slowly, continually up the shores. And I heard the hissing rustle of the liquid and sands as directed to me, whispering to congratulate me. For the one I love lay sleeping by me under the same cover in the cool night. In the stillness and the autumn moonbeams, his face was inclined towards me, and his arm lay lightly around my breast. And that night, I was happy. So, that was in the 1867 edition. It was about 13 years after the first publication, and after the nation had gone through some other pretty difficult things. And Whitman had decided, you know what? To hell with the illusions. I am who I am. And there's no greater fat in the world that sticks to my bones. So there's a lot more here. A lot of topics. And any humanist looking for illumination into the meaning of life or the meaning of love or the power of personal expression has a lot to gain by getting into Walt Whitman. And I hope that this is a good introduction and that maybe some of you will go and explore some more. Thank you.